energy is the currency of great companies, not time, not money. It's energy. Can you get everybody's energy focused on the right thing? Can you get everybody rowing the right way in the boat? If that's the case, there's exponential gains that can be made. But it all starts with having an understanding, a very clear mission.
This is Lead with Culture. I'm Kate Volman, and on this episode, we're talking about the importance of mission. Does everyone on your team know the mission of your company? I chatted with Tony Ferraro, Floyd's director of coaching, about this important topic, and we share a few practical steps you can take today to determine if your mission is strong enough to move people to work towards accomplishing it. We hope this episode inspires you to make mission king in your organization. Enjoy. All right, Tony, I'm so excited you're back. We get to have a great conversation about principle number 2 in the culture solution, which is mission is king.
Yes, yes. So I'm having a very mission driven day. How about you?
A mission driven day. What does a mission driven day look like, Tony?
That's a good question. I think the point of that is that you wake up and you have this inherent understanding of why you're doing what you're doing that day and how it connects to something that's bigger than yourself and directly connects, which is kind of what we're going to talk about with mission being king, because I think it would be kind of depressing to get up and not have an idea why you're going about doing what you're doing. But I think a lot of us do that. They go to work and try to find the connection between something bigger than just whatever you're doing that day. So that's one of the reasons why we say mission is king. There's some others, but that's the big one.
That is the big one, principle number 2. And it's funny that's how you started this conversation, because I was reading the culture solution, just perusing through it the other
Really?
day. And, because why not? And there's a section that is called What Matters Most. And Matthew writes, how we live our days is how we live our lives. That is true for a person and for an organization. So, how beautiful. I didn't even know you were going to say that you were living your mission driven day today. And that
Absolutely.
fits beautifully, because it's true with an individual and of course an organization. And who runs organizations? The individual. So we all need to be connected, not only to the your own personal mission and why it is that you're doing what you're doing, but being really connected to the mission of the organization, so that you want to have a mission driven day, right? Could you imagine if you're so disconnected that you wake up and you kind of like have to disconnect from mission to go do your work for most of your day? And there's a lot that obviously is a big disconnect. So let's talk about mission is king. Obviously, when Matthew Kelly wrote the culture solution, he shares the 6 immutable principles of a dynamic culture, and each of the principles really builds on one another. And mission is king is obviously very important. It's number 2, and we need to have that clear mission. I find that most organizations, and what we see with a lot of our clients, they don't have a strong mission. They don't have a team that is really not only connected to the mission, but probably can't even say the mission of the organization. They kind of maybe know a little bit, and obviously that can be a big challenge. So Tony, is your mission statement really that important?
Well, just to piggyback on one thing you said, I agree with you. This ambiguity around mission is there. Now, some clients we work with, I get a sense that the organization, the people in the organization rather, have a real clear idea of why they're doing what they're doing. They may not express it in a way that we think, traditionally. Because, and what I'm getting to here is the difference between a mission statement and knowing your mission. Now, the two are very much intertwined, but I just think we have to be careful to say, what are we really talking about? And what we're talking about here is that everyone in the organization has a clear idea of why the company exists, and then the next level of why I exist in the company and why the work I do is important to help the company achieve the mission. So that's just a framework of what we're talking about with understanding the mission. And so the reason I say that is we do sometimes get wrapped up on mission statement, and it's very important, but as you know, what the other side I see is where people have a really well crafted wordsmith mission statement, and it just doesn't speak to the people in a way that answers that question. I get up today, I have a clear idea of why I'm doing what I'm doing and how it fits into the mission. And so that I think is a key differentiation. It's important. Now, a good mission statement will be clear about that and will help people. And it's particularly important as companies grow or as people come into the organization. And it's a good way of communicating that within your culture. But the mission, having a great mission statement on the wall is not necessarily a guarantee that everybody understands the mission, nor, and probably more importantly, does it guarantee that your decision making and the life of your organization revolves around it.
Yeah, and we see that with strategic plans too, right? We get so caught up in the we just want to create all these graphs and charts, and it's almost like, is it an ego driven thing? It's we want to look smart. It's so interesting to me how we kind of disconnect from simplicity and making it simple. Like the simpler your mission statement is, the more connected people can feel with it. It's almost like when you read a really great book, so often it's like you're reading it and it's so impactful because you're like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, duh. Like, so many of Matthew's books are so brilliant, but they're brilliant because he takes these really big ideas, but he makes them so simple. And so, why are there so many organizations that feel like we have to overcomplicate? We have to create this mission statement that to the outside world sounds like we're really important and we know big words instead of really making it sure that it's that connected, and not only connected to the people in the organization, but really great mission statements, you feel that connection from the outside, from your clients, like your clients understand the mission, your clients are on your board, your clients want to refer business to you because they're like, yes, I stand behind the mission of this organization. That's a really clearly defined, powerful mission.
Absolutely. And you kind of answered the question there. Why do we have this? Why does it exist where we've got these fancy mission statements? I mean, raise your hand if you've been in one of the sessions where, okay, our organization's going to we're going to create a mission statement and we've got all the poster boards and the post-its and you spend a day on it with a facilitator. And that's all good. I don't mean to be sarcastic here, but that's all good. But the point is, the end of the day, people leave feeling like they've accomplished something when they really haven't. It's the starting point. Everything has to revolve around that. But we know what happens. You go into the mission statement workshop, and as Jeff Bezos says, the process becomes the product. Okay, great. We've got this mission statement. We accomplished something. No, if that's the case, you did it wrong. You should leave one of those workshops going, yeah, just as you said, that's obvious. That's what we do. Let's get after it now. And let's look at everything we do and see if it aligns with that mission. And that people leave that going, that makes perfect sense. And I see where I fit in on this. And I also see where if the company accomplishes that mission, I'm going to accomplish my mission, my own personal mission, which is why people join organizations in the first place. So that's one of the things. We just make this mission statement the king instead of mission being the king. And we see those all the time. Now, that's not to say that you can't really spend some time and should spend some time creating a great mission statement. It just has to be action oriented and it has to describe what the company does and why they do it so that everybody has that clear understanding. So that's the first part. Once you have that statement, then why the mission is so important is that it should guide all of your decision making. It should guide all of the strategic decisions you make. It should guide the personnel decisions you should make down to the allocation of resources. That people have an understanding that this really isn't my office. It's a resource that helps the organization accomplish their mission. I used to work in schools. I can tell you that moving a teacher from like sometimes you have to move things around because the best way to get everything you need to get done at the school is to have people at different places. Moving a teacher from his or her classroom to another classroom, like it's easier to get out of a timeshare. It's just that hard. And people should have ownership, but when it becomes ownership, like this is more important than the mission, then that's a sign that there's a problem. But when we see organizations where people are like, where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? If this is what the mission needs, I'm on it. And then they find their purpose within that. So the statements of the mission's important, what it is, but then what are you doing with that is really what I think Matthew was getting to in the idea that mission is king. And sometimes those can be really difficult decisions that leaders have to make, but they do it because it advances the mission of the organization. And so but that becomes a kind of a guiding point.
Yeah, he talks about how it's that North Star for organizations. And I love the section where he talks about where we get to disagree and commit. When we focus on mission and when leaders can focus on making mission king, and then when we have a decision to make about the organization, a direction we're going to go, something that we really need to do, we're able to come together as a team and make that decision based on mission, not based on what I think or what Tony thinks or anyone in the organization. It really is on what the mission is. And we see this all the time in organizations because mission is king. And so often teams try to make their leader king. They make their CEO the king or queen of the organization, right? They kind of abdicate responsibility because, oh, we just do it this way because that's what Tony decided. So that's the way it has to be done. Well, that's not a great way to make a decision. Instead of, hey, we're doing it based on the mission. And look, the bigger organizations get, the more that there are going to be decisions that are made that maybe you feel like, hey, I would have gone another direction, but still we get to disagree, commit, move forward, and do what needs to be done in order to fulfill the mission. And it takes a lot of ego out of it, right? It strips away a lot of ego from people in organizations to be able to do that, to be able to say, hey, if we think this is what's best for mission, then we're going to move forward and do it. And that's when you have really incredible teams that have a lot of trust.
Absolutely. And trust really, is the key. So many times we have all these different symptoms, that come up. It's communication, it's this, it's that. And the reality is it's trust. It's why one of the questions we ask in coaching so often when someone's dealing with some difficulty with someone else, do you trust them and do they trust you? And just getting to the heart of the matter. Now, a good leader will build that trust and will communicate why a decision is important based on the mission. So that's the leader's role. And then the other people in the organization's role is, what you said, disagree and commit. That's not whatever you say. That's fine. And I'm going to say, okay. But then as soon as it goes bad, I'm going to say, I told you so. This is really committing that you understand that this is what's best for the mission. And then, and this is where the word comes from, I have to be submissive. And that's not a bad word. It means I have to make my personal mission below the mission of the organization. That's really where the derivation of that comes from. So if people can do that, it's may not what I wanted to do. It's not the work I want to do in this one, but you know what? I'm going to be indifferent to what the work is because the mission is what is most important. Because what we find is when people can be indifferent to the work, they then become ingenious. When people are put in things they didn't think they wanted to do, they weren't sure they could do it, but they just got behind the mission. They all of a sudden develop skills and solve problems that they never would have if they were in their comfort zone of just doing what they want and following their own mission statement. Obviously, if we're talking about something ethical or legal or so, that some decision's been made that you disagree with, that's one thing. But when we're
Well,
talking
if
about
you're dealing
other,
with those issues, you don't have your mission probably needs to be read.
yeah, but once you get past that, I mean, you're right. Putting your ego aside and say, okay, now why am I doing this? Because I have trust that what I'm doing is going to benefit the mission of the organization. Now, ultimately, that'll benefit me because that's why I'm there. I hitch my wagon to your organization because you can help me accomplish my dreams and fulfill my mission. But just letting go, once the decision's made, it's just a waste of energy. Energy is the currency of great companies, not time, not money. It's energy. Can you get everybody's energy focused on the right thing? Can you get everybody rowing the right way in the boat? If that's the case, there's exponential gains that can be made. But it all starts with having an understanding, a very clear mission. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, yes, a mission statement is that important.
So mission is king. If we're going to make mission king of the organization, obviously people need to know what the mission is and it needs to be worthy of being king, right? Like it has to be worthy. So if people are listening thinking, wow, maybe I need to look at my mission again or kind of rethink the mission of the organization or really figure out, does my team really know the mission of the organization? How can we as leaders really decide, hey, is my mission right now worthy of being king? Worthy of doing all of these things that we've been talking about, building that trust and building the growth of everyone on the team and getting everyone working towards that mission. Is it worthy of being king?
Yeah. Great point. Is it worthy of the throne? Is it wear the crown? Yeah, but that's you make such a great point there and ask such a great question, Kate, because, I have my own biases and thoughts about mission statements, but I think there are some fundamentals that are important. And yes, everyone should stop what they're doing, hit pause, go to their mission statement and ask those same questions. Your day would be well spent. And if you spent the day doing that, you'd really be adding to the value of your organization. My thought is this, that there are some fundamentals in a mission statement. And I'm not talking about the syntax and those things, but I think and what's interesting is there's kind of a dichotomy in the two things that in what I'm saying here. So on one hand, I think your mission statement has to be aspirational, right? So when I read this, it stirs something in me that gets me a little excited, that gets me really reaches into me and says this is important of what we're doing. This is really important and I can make a difference if I help this mission get accomplished. So it has to be aspirational, right? So we sell paper. It might work at Dunder Mifflin, but it's not. Uh, People don't come to work, really excited about doing that. So aspirational is important. Now, here's where the dichotomy comes in. I think the second part of it is that it needs to be doable and realistic and appropriate. So the same thing, the paper company, we're going to put a dent in the universe. You're not. We've seen this with that was the big thing with tech companies. We're gonna revolutionize this. We're going to change. I just happened to reread something the other day in the WeWork book. Right. I mean, it's we're gonna raise the consciousness of the world through office space. All right. Okay. There was a disconnect, and everybody there knew it, and everybody was saying, "What does that have to do with what we're doing?" So finding that sweet spot that's not just says what we do every day, but gives meaning to what you do every day without being delusional. Because I think on both sides of that, people are like, why would I come to work to do that? And the other one is, what are we really? I don't see any connection between the two. So finding that sweet spot is really important. So it seems like a dichotomy, but when you see a really good mission statement or people have really good mission outline, you just know it. You
Yeah.
know it and you go, okay, that makes sense. So
You feel it. Like it's like that
yeah.
instant connection. So as this morning before we jumped on, I since we were talking about mission, I looked up some companies' mission statements just to see, right? Some big companies and to feel like do they fit both of those criteria? And so TED, the company TED, the
Mhm.
TED Talks, we love them. We love watching them. We learn from them. So their mission is spread ideas. Spread ideas. I mean, simple, aspirational. They are literally doing that every day. LinkedIn, connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. Connect the world's professionals. Like, boom, right? Like, these are things that we feel like we are connected to. Microsoft, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Like these are all they make oh, let's see what's Starbucks, people and their Starbucks. Starbucks to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time.
So that just makes so much sense because what they do is they speak to what you're doing. See, another, let me give you an example, another example, if that's okay, of a real life example. So I was getting ready to do a talk and a workshop, some training for a group, and they asked if they could say a prayer to start with. So that's great. And the last part of the prayer that this person introduced said, "And Lord, help us." And he started to list the three tenets of their mission. And that would have been great that this person who was saying the prayer felt to include it. I thought that's kind of neat. But what struck me was as he started to say it, everybody in the audience repeated those three as he was saying it. So they knew what was coming, they knew what they were, and it was clear that they understood what that was. And I was really taken aback. I'm like, that's now they've got it. It's simple and everybody understands it and realizes how doing that will get them to where they want to go. So it can be done. You just work at it and be simple and simplify. If I was giving anybody advice, one thing I don't think a mission statement should have, and this is where I'm not going down my own bias branch, but you don't have to telling people who you are in the mission statement. Is we go back to energy. We're a group of people in Southwest Missouri, in the mountains who, so what? Okay. But because I think that can get you in a, like, if you said, for example, let's say you had a small company and it was all female and you made your mission statement, we are a group of females bonding together to bring better social media experiences. Okay, fine. But what happens if all of a sudden you want to expand and you want to hire people and one of them isn't female and he's the best person for the job? So I just think talking a lot about who you are is just kind of a waste of time. Just get to the point, as you mentioned, this is what we do. And implied in that is why we do it. Everything you said in there, like connecting people so they could be better. No one asked the question, why would you do that? Right? I mean, it's implied. Making people better is a good thing. And so I think that can be implied in the mission statement also. I don't think you have to tell people why what you're doing is important, or maybe what you're doing isn't that important. If you have to explain why it's that important, it should just jump out.
Well, you said so what? And immediately it was almost like that's a great way to kind of when you come together and you're building that mission statement, it's almost like write it all out. It reminds me of authors, right? They talk about how you might have to write 100,000 words to get a 50,000 word book or whatever it is. So you write it all out. And then when you read it back, you can ask yourself, so what? So what? So what? Does this matter? Does this matter? And then you get down to the crux of, hey, spread ideas. You know, I wonder what that conversation looked like when they were coming up with the mission. Like maybe it was, to bring together all the thought leaders in the world to do X, Y, who knows? But then the essence of it, the core of the mission, spread ideas. And so when we can do that as organizations, everyone feels more connected. And what's awesome, and we're not talking about this principle today, but with principle number 4, hire with rigorous discipline, you can then hire people that believe in the mission, believe in the vision of the organization, and they're excited to be part of what you're building. So that is huge, not only with internal, but also when people are seeing external what you're doing. We want to attract great talent, and having a really incredible mission where people feel like, hey, I want to be part of that is huge. All right. So, Tony, what advice would you give to someone listening right now that's thinking, man, I don't know if my mission is worthy of being king? And I don't know the last time we even talked about mission in one of our meetings.
Right.
So, what is one thing that someone can do today to help with this particular principle of mission is king?
Sure. I'm going to give you two if that's okay.
No,
So,
I asked for
okay.
one.
All right. One. Okay. Let me give you one
No,
and
you
one
can
A.
share two. We'll take it. We'll take both.
Number one, just as you said, go to your mission statement, read it, and ask yourself the question, so what? I mean, you nailed that, Kate. That's exactly so what? Sit with it for a while. Does this really answer those questions? What do we do and why do we do it? Does that make a connection to me in some way? That's number one. Answer the question, so what? And secondly, then do an inventory. And this doesn't have to be, I said, sit with it for a while, but do an inventory and ask yourself, is Mission King in our organization? What I mean by that is, let me go back and look at decisions we've made, people we've hired, and ask myself, has Mission been king in this? And you can say, in my greatest success in this, whether I had a team or I had an organization, if I look at my successes, did they happen because we were focused on mission? If I look at some failures, did they happen because I was focused on mission? Spoiler, the answer is going to be no, because typically it's going to be, I did this because of this person. I did this because I didn't want to make waves. I did this because it was easier. I did this because it was more economical. I'm just reading a book right now, Bill Walsh's book on leadership. And he made an interesting point. When he got there, he said, I had a standards of operation. And he said, that became our mission statement to do these things well, because I knew that the score would take care of itself. If we made every decision from the coaches to the players to the trainers to the maintenance workers, there was going to be a standard of excellence throughout the organization. And the title of the book is The Score Will Take Care of Itself. And he even had someone go behind his back in his first year to the owner and said, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't even have win the Super Bowl as our mission. And Bill Walsh's response was, well, it wasn't. It was to do these things well, and I knew the score would take care of itself. He fired that person, which because clearly that it is. So the point is, just go back and do that inventory and ask yourself. And what you'll find is that when typically when we make some poor decisions, it's because we let in other factors besides the mission. And once you start doing that, or you let people, as you said, you let people make you the king, and you have to be really diligent. No, I'm not making this decision because it's what I want. It's a decision because this is what's best for the organization. So if you did those two things, take an afternoon to do it, I think you come to some clarity.
Awesome. I'm going to add one more to that. One more to those three things. We'll round it out with three is
Okay.
to ask your team right now, the next time you get together, you're in a meeting, is to ask them, what's the mission of the organization? Just asking them and seeing, what do they write down? Are they looking at each other? Are they or are they clear? Like the organization that Tony just spoke at, are they so clear? They're so on point. They're so on mission, and that is a great test and a great tool. And we got to get that right first. It's principle number 2 for a reason.
That's right. They're linear. And just as you said, everything falls off one another. So you can't, while you can work on all six of the steps in the culture solution, there are chronological in terms of, or hierarchical in terms of something has to be in place before the next one really makes sense.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And if you're wondering what people would think about your mission, and if you're also wondering, hey, what is my company culture? How would people rate the culture in my organization? We have a really great free gift for you because we created a free culture assessment. It takes like 10 minutes to take. You just answer some questions and you get a report back, and it's very specific to you. So not only do you get an overall culture score, but you also get a score in each of the 6 principles. So you can actually see principle number 2, mission is king. Where did we fall in that scale? And so you can get that free culture assessment at floydconsulting.com/culture. And if you're enjoying our podcast, we would so appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rating and write a review. It really does help so other people can find the show. And as always, until next time, lead with culture.